Welcome to another Rumination Chat with Andrew. I am delighted to join you in yet another topic of significant importance: free speech in Western society. In recent years, particularly during and post-COVID, Western governments have been working laboriously with private industries to censor our speech. First, it was because they were trying to minimize on hate speech and to protect the health of the most vulnerable members of the society. Now we hear that speech must be restricted in the best interest of national security. Really? Who are the terrorists? Anyone else but the global elites? Follow me as I extrapolate on some of these important issues. One of the toxic seeds which have fully blossomed into the fruit of censorship, the restriction on free speech and the unfiltered articulation of one's thoughts freely, candidly, transparently, and dispassionately, was enthusiastically sown during the COVID-19 pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic witnessed an unprecedented level of repression of speech, perhaps never experienced in Western civilization, post the Enlightenment era. The entire global population was placed under house arrest without any justifiable reason other than a so-called virus was in vogue, seeking whom it might devour. Citizens of the world were forbidden from engaging in full, meaningful, and open discussions about this dark beast called COVID-19, which was lurking quietly in the dark, ready at any given moment to place us within its deadly claws. No dialogue outside of the official government narrative was allowed. Freedom of expression seemed to have suffered an untimely and sudden death. For the first time, to my recollection, Westerners were coerced to believe the diktats of their so-called elected public officials and their government-sanctioned scientists and physicians, as they knew what was best for our medical, economic, social, mental, physiological, and psychological needs. The biblical statement echoed by Christ himself over 2,000 years ago, "Whoever is not with me is against me, and whoever does not gather with me scatters." That was taken from Matthew 12, verse 30. Indeed, to go against the wishes and desires of all governments worldwide incurred the wrath of the kings and queens, aka prime ministers, presidents, and the now idolized medical doctor. After all, politics and science, working harmoniously and unitedly, are the perfect antidote and cure for eradicating the physical ailments and socioeconomic ills that bedevil the postmodern society. Who would dare challenge our highly esteemed medical professionals? To question any government policy or protocol as regards the pandemic was synonymous with being anti-science, backward, uncivilized, a religious zealot, and just merely unsympathetic to senior citizens, a demographic believed to have been dying at an alarming rate. So, young people's activities had to be curtailed in order to protect the health and well-being of the elderly. Shouldn't we all applaud our public officials for such care and tender love shown towards the most vulnerable members of society? Why isn't that the same love and sympathy and the respect for the sanctity of human life demonstrated to dying children, women, senior citizens in the innumerable wars that have been waged and are still being waged against humanity? During the onslaught of the pandemic, left-leaning partisans claimed that they were in support of science and thus submissively complied with all government mandates. Science, in their opinion, must be strictly obeyed. In essence, without science, we would not have achieved the modern advances in society. The problem with this argument, while there is some truth expressed therein, is the Enlightenment, which began in Europe, came about as a result of a religious revolution. Modern science, indeed, came out of the Protestant Reformation that started in Western Europe. The scientific method, if and when properly followed and applied, is biblical in its orientation. The Bible enjoins upon all adherents, and I quote, "Prove all things, hold fast to that which is good," unquote. And that comes from 1 Thessalonians 5, verse 21. At any rate, leftists wanted to save lives, and science is the only tool to save fragile human lives. So they claimed. So governments' repression of freedom and of expression and freedom of choice are two principles that left-wingers were willing to be disposed of. Simply put, science trumps all freedoms. Doesn't this sound like a cult-like form of thinking? Fast forward to the Russian-Ukrainian war, we saw a shift in leftist ideology regarding the sanctity of human life. Joe Biden, an official member of the left-leaning Democratic, could not settle comfortably into his job before the US was engaged in another war, which has resulted in the loss of hundreds of thousands of innocent human lives. Isn't Biden a proud representative of science embracing the saving of human lives political demographic? Has he suddenly dispensed of his passion and advocacy for human life, no matter the cost? I am curious, ladies and gentlemen. I sincerely hope that you are following my trend of thought. I am a bizarre thinker after all, and perhaps you are not. I understand, but I still crave your indulgence. President Biden has just responded, though unsatisfactorily, that he is fighting needless imperial wars in the name of freedom and democracy. Euphemistic buzzwords for militarism and imperialism. But Mr. President, may I pose to you, sir, an important question? What do freedom and democracy signify in light of the unwanted deaths of hundreds of thousands of innocent people? Better yet, Mr. President, are lives still sacrosanct to self-proclaimed left-wing ideologists? Ironically, during the pandemic, the avowed Trump-loving, anti-science, right-wing ideologists claimed to be advocates of freedom of expression, and therefore encouraged a multi-pronged approach to the pandemic. At least, that was the superficial image projected to the naked human eye. Yet, ironically, however, now that a war is being waged in the Middle East between the Israelis and Palestinians, the much touted freedom-embracing right-wingers have been aggressively attacking anyone with the testicular fortitude to question the atrocities of Israel to their neighboring Palestinian brothers and sisters. For example, news reports have surfaced in which Governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, in which he seeks to censor and restrict the speech of any American critical of Israel's treatment of its Palestinian neighbors. Given that a critique would not cohere with the political right views on Israel, right-wing politicians would now shred the noble principles of freedom of expression for political expediency. Are we being played? Is the entire political machinery controlled by powerful lobbyists behind the scenes? Are politicians for real? Or are they simply actors, as William Shakespeare intimated, on the grand stage of life? Are politicians concerned about saving human lives, or are they more inclined to preserving their political legacy and tenure? Why were politicians on a global scale able to work harmoniously, unitedly, and collegially during the so-called pandemic, but are unable to join their voices and action against the brutal atrocities taking place in Gaza? Why? 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 Thank you so much for joining in yet another thoughtful discussion. I hope that you will continue to reflect on some of the points that I have mentioned in this video, and that you will ensure that you educate yourselves on the happenings in the world. Thanks so much for your participation and for your definite attendance or viewing my video. Look forward to seeing you in yet another video. Bye.